For being here today. We're going to call this meeting of the Senate Public Safety Subcommittee on the Fulton County Jail to order. Our chairman, Senator Randy Robertson, will be here shortly. He is stuck behind that accident down south on 75. Thank you for being here. We're going to begin, as we do all our meetings, with a word of prayer. And I'm going to ask Senator Bearden, if you wouldn't mind opening us in a word.
Sure. Bow your heads. Lord, we just ask that you allow us to do the right things for the citizens of this state, listen to the testimony that is brought forth to us, and always bless us and keep us safe throughout this weekend and bring us all home safely together later this afternoon. In Jesus Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. Okay, today's committee meeting is going to be focused around public testimony. I want to thank the folks that are here. We know some people had wanted to present testimony throughout the process. However, we were trying to follow along a very methodical and organized approach in hearing from what we call the four legs of the stool in addressing the concerns at the Fulton County Jail. And those are starting with the sheriff, then the county commission, the district attorney, and ultimately the judiciary. We have had a series of meetings. I actually appointed this committee thanks to the help of the Lieutenant Governor back in October of last year. And I just want to remind the expertise that was brought to bear. We have Senator Sonia Halpern. She is the chairwoman of the Fulton County delegation. We have Senator Tim Bearden, who is new but has a great background in law enforcement and formerly chaired the House Public Safety Committee. We have Senator Chuck Payne, who served as a juvenile probation officer and also now serves as our chairman of Veterans and Homeland Security. We have Senator Brian Strickland, who is a chairman of our Judiciary Committee. I serve as the Senate Chairman of Public Safety, and then the chairman of this committee is our Majority Whip, Senator Randy Robertson. Senator Robertson had a storied career with the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, where he actually both worked in and managed a jail, so no one more qualified to lead this effort than he is. So today we're going to turn it over again to folks who are going to come provide some public testimony. We would just ask when you do that that you keep it professional and concise. You'll be doing that from the podium over there so all the folks at home can see you. And I'm going to turn it back over to the chairman right now to begin that process in the sign-up sheet. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the traffic, turning my hour and 45-minute drive into a 3-hour and 15-minute drive. Just got to see some good hazmat work, so that's the important thing. Okay, I'm working off the sign-up sheet, and the first person we'll listen to testimony from is Dominique Grant with Women on the Rise, Georgia. Good morning, Ms. Grant.
Thank y'all for having me here today, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to express my thoughts on this Fulton County Jail, or the potential of a Fulton County Jail, and the conditions where we are now. My name is Dominique Grant. I'm the Campaign and Operations Manager of Women on the Rise. I've been with the organization for 2 years and have had the opportunity to see firsthand the conditions of Fulton County Jail and Atlanta City Detention Center. I came into this work in the heart of a campaign to close Atlanta City Detention Center and turn it to a center for equity and wellness. We were unable to do that, but we were successfully able to assist with the 2 floors of Atlanta City Detention Center being repurposed for community through organizations that we partner with, like Atlanta had.
Hang on just a second. Is there a button on the front that you see there?
Oh, what a difference. Oh, wow, what a difference. But I've been with the organization for 2 years. We've partnered with multiple organizations throughout the Atlanta area to figure out how to keep people off of the streets, how to keep our community safer. And we've been able to do that through multiple policies through Atlanta City Council. But then recently, we were granted a contract with Grady Hospital and Fulton County Behavioral Health. We understood that although we were not able to close Atlanta City Detention Center and get people out of jail that way, we knew that there was other ways that we could divert people and other ways that we could provide services to get people out and keep people off the streets, keep people safe, and keep people healthy. During that time, we started the program last year. We're with Fulton County Behavioral Health. We provide services to up to 100 women a year. Last year, we had 76 women. Out of those 76 women, only 1 woman has been rearrested. So we are super proud of that success rate. What we do, we have reentry specialists that we've hired, and Fulton County is responsible for the hiring and the cost of their salary. Ultimately, what we do is we start with the women while they're inside Atlanta City Detention Center. We find out what their problems are, who their support systems are, and how we can best serve them when they come out. When they come out, we provide direct services by getting them their crucial documents, providing MARTA cards, any type of transportation, and then also providing services to figure out employment or if they'll need Social Security, because there are clients that have mental health issues. Along with that, we continue with the women throughout the year. We provide services to connect them back to their families. We work directly with the community. We work directly with Fulton County to assure that these women are not being rearrested or reoffending. Our goal is to find ways to keep people out of the jail doors, period, before they even come into the jail. We think that that would be a solution. Instead of building a bigger jail, finding ways to be able to provide services to people who are on the streets. We've worked with ACLU, who provided information last year that found that the majority of the people who are currently inside of Fulton County Rice Street are there because they have nonviolent offenses. I have a personal client situation.
Excuse me, real quick. Mm-hmm. You said you work with the ACLU. Is this the ACLU report?
Yes.
And the majority of the people held where were in there for nonviolent offenses?
So Rice Street, it wasn't the majority of people. We found that the majority of the people on the floor, the majority of the people that were found, so the number of overcrowding, the number of beds that were needed for Atlanta City Detention Center was about 800. We found that there were 726 people that were being held at Rice Street who had nonviolent offenses and typically were rearrested due to homelessness or substance use disorders.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
So with that, we've been working deeply with community. We've partnered with Fulton County Superior Court to educate the community about the public safety assessment that is done to assess if someone is able to re-enter into community. We're working with them to figure out ways to get the community educated about that. We want to partner with the community. We want to partner with the government. We want to find ways to keep people off of the floors, but to also divert resources and those funds back into the community.
Okay, thank you. And have you had the opportunity to watch any of the previous committee hearings?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you're familiar with the testimony of the sheriff that there's no one sleeping on the floors at the
anymore
street, correct? And to be clear, sleeping on the floor was sleeping on a boat, which is a smaller bed. It's a portable bed. No one was actually sleeping on concrete. So just want to be clear on that.
Oh, so I definitely understand where you're coming from. A boat, to me, is the equivalent of a floor. It's just as
well. And having purchased them and having dealt with overcrowding, it's absolutely not. It provides much more stability than asking a human being to lay on a hard surface as a floor would be in the county jail. But now, you said Fulton County pays the salaries of your program?
Yes. So
what is that current investment by the taxpayer?
So the current investment is $450,000 for 100 women a year. And with that, we provide 2 months of housing, MARTA cards, transportation to doctor's appointments, any medical situations that they may have to take care of that we have to transport them back and forth to. And then we also make sure that we find permanent housing for them in the process.
Very good. Now, where's the 2 months housing? Where is that at?
So we are partnering with multiple transitional homes. Unfortunately, there isn't a set like transitional center where we can just take the women. So we work in community with transitional homes. One of them being the Coast House of Hope, another one is Swim Foundation. They provide services, and then we work with the owners of the home to make sure that everything is cohesive.
Okay, and after the 60 days, what's your success rate in transitioning them from the 2 months housing into something a little more stable?
I don't have those numbers on me, but I have your email, so I can definitely find out and get that information to you. I will be completely honest, it has been a struggle to find permanent housing because of the housing crisis that we're facing now. But what we do is typically, once they're in that particular transitional house, if we're able to get them employment or Social Security, they're able to continue to live in those transitional housing and pay their rent on their own.
And how many women are currently in the program?
Currently, we have about 36 women from the top of the year up until now.
And what kind of success rate has your program had in reconnecting those ladies back with their families?
We don't have any specific numbers on that. To be completely frank, with women, normally they automatically want to get back to their families and their children. We work on that reconnection from the time that they're incarcerated to assure that they have a support system when they come out.
Well, what I discovered in the past is that men had a much easier way of transitioning out of county jail, and so we had to work through some foundations to actually purchase some foreclosed property and convert it into housing strictly for females to give them the opportunity to transition back. And a lot of times I'd use the example that the men trafficking women had an easier time transitioning back into the community than the females that were actually being trafficked when we're talking about sex industry. And so we quickly determined that females have a much more difficult time, and sadly I'm not sure that it's not society looks on females with a criminal history different than they look on males with criminal history. And in some cases, I think, well, in every case that's extremely unfair, but in many of the cases I think society's blind to the bias in which they treat women coming out of jail and prison.
Well, thank you. You warmed my heart today, and we're aligned on that matter. And that's the reason that we have the organization that we have where we cater to women specifically. One of the big hurdles, like you mentioned with housing, is getting children reunited with their children, because transitional housing does not provide housing for children as well. But what we have been able to do, again, is just make sure that they're connected with whoever the caregiver is of their children. We have a really great success story. Her name is Kelly. She's a member, but she has been able to rebuild her relationship with her children, grow that relationship. She is now employed at UPS, and she's continuing on in her process and her journey to find ways to get her children back.
I really appreciate that. Now, are y'all currently still working out of the Atlanta Detention Center?
Yes, so we are currently,
How much space do y'all use there?
well, we are not housed in Atlanta City Detention Center. Our office is in Hapeville. We just go inside Atlanta City Detention Center when we receive referrals from Fulton County on women who have mental health diagnoses or substance use disorders. They're referred to us. Our reentry specialists go inside Atlanta City Detention Center because that's where the women from Rice Street are being housed, and we start the process there.
Now, you say are they being referred to you by your relationship with the Fulton County court system?
Yes, so
Is that part of a plea bargain, or is that a pretrial, or how exactly are you removing them from are they still part of the court system while they're in your program?
So it depends. Some of them come out and they're not on probation. Some of them come out and their terms of probation is that they work directly with us. Most of the time, it's not a plea bargain or anything like that. A lot of the women are either getting time served and coming out to our program, PD referrals, or we...
Explain exactly what you
I'm
mean
sorry.
by public defender
Public
referral.
defender referrals, yes.
Right, but the public defender referral is post-case?
Sometimes it's post-case, sometimes it's pre-trial, and then we also have circumstances where we have to wait for someone to bond them out until so where we provide them services. So we have had women where they were incarcerated the entire time we provided services to them.
Now, if anybody's bonded out, do y'all work with them and coordinate to make sure that they make their court appearances? and things of
Absolutely.
that nature?
That
Okay.
that's our goal. So our goal is to assure that whatever it is that they need for that year while they're out and they're working with us, that we are working with their public defenders, their probation officers, providing information necessary to make sure that their life out in society runs smoothly.
Thank you very much. Any other committee members with questions? What's 8? Yes, sir.
Just a comment. Thank you. That success rate about folks not going back into the system, their recidivism rate, is truly extraordinary. So what you're doing clearly is remarkable. Are you aware of anybody doing that for the male population?
Absolutely. So there's an organization that we partner with. Well, and there's an organization in the room that does the work as well, PAD. But there's also a partner organization called Chris 180. They work with men, and then they also work with women, or young women that are under the age of 25.
And Mr. Chairman, this might go back for the committee's research. I'd be interested to see the length of stay in the jail for the female population versus the male population.
I
That'd be-
would be curious to see that as well. We've had, like I said, certain clients that the entire time, because we can't post bail, that's obviously a conflict of interest, but the entire time that we provided that service to them, so within that year, they were incarcerated for that entire year.
And I think if we get those numbers, one thing we have to do is we always are driven by numbers, but they have to be really good numbers. So I think we have to look at the offense. We have to look at the criminal history as much as we can while protecting the privacy of the individual to make sure that we're looking at apples and apples. Because I think what we have discovered is, shockingly to Chairman Albers and myself, when we find that there are two individuals, these just happen to be males, who are held in the Fulton County Jail for 10 years and 14 years respectively. I mean, that is an extraordinarily ridiculous amount of time for anybody to be held in a detention center. You know, the vast majority of most crimes, including some serious crimes, that individual would have already had their case adjudicated, gone to prison, and already been released on some type of supervision if we're talking about 14 years. And I'm talking about many, if you look at the numbers, if you look at cases, and I know Senator Bearden has seen it in the past, where you look at cases of assaults and things of that nature, and Chairman Payne also, to where individuals are adjudicated, gone to court, and do not spend more than 7 years, if that, under inside of a prison. So, you know, if we get the numbers and try to get them as granular as possible, I think that'll give us something to work with.
Well, thank you for that request, and I'll get on it.
And thank you. I appreciate your testimony. Any other questions? Chairman Payne.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your testimony. Hadn't worked in the juvenile court for 30 years. I believe in restorative justice and have always been a big proponent of that. And then my question was, because specifically, mental health, where are you finding there are adequate resources for those with mental health issues and needs?
That's a tough question. To be completely frank, from the psychiatry side, we're able to get them their medication. We have a relationship with, I can't think of the name right now, but we have a relationship with the local hospital that's a part of Grady that assists us with getting them their medication, but it is hard to find those therapeutic services. We do offer, as an organization, counseling every other Monday for the women that are in the program, and we do group counseling services, but it is extremely difficult to find therapy services for these women. One, with getting them to the services and then being able to afford it, or having enough providers that fall under Medicaid that will allow them to go see them.
Well, I just want to thank you because, like I said, I've worked in detention facilities and plus working in the field with probationers. I just, men and women think different, and so when you're dealing with mental health issues, it's better. You find so much more benefit if you focus on them separately instead of just putting them all in one basket. So there's
Absolutely.
What you're doing.
Thank you. One final thing. Now, y'all are a 501c3?
Yes, sir.
Where does your funding come from?
Our funding, we recently were awarded the Mackenzie Scott Grant through Yield Giving. And then we have multiple funding sources. We do tons of work in the community. Some of our funding comes from campaigns, but this work specifically is funded through Fulton County.
Okay, so either Fulton County or you primarily work within the community, looking at different pots around the community where grants are available?
Yeah,
and things of that nature?
yes, we are a very small organization. There's about 7 of us on staff, so we try to get funding from however we can. Our executive director, Robin, is extremely effective at.
Any federal funding?
No, we do not receive federal funding.
Thank you. Okay, I think
you.
that'll be it. Our next person who Ms. Grant alluded to, I believe, is Drew Umberger with PAD.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for allowing us in your space today. Along with me, I have Letitia McCall, who is director of our Social Services Department. PAD, it stands for Policing Alternatives Diversions Initiative. So we focus on diverting people from incarceration. We enroll them in our program, and we're linkage to like all services, anything you can think of: substance use, mental health, food, transportation. Everybody's needs are different, so we focus on each individual goals at each one. I also want to say, I want to go ahead and just get this out of the way. I'm a person with lived experience. I have been incarcerated in the Fulton County Jail several years ago. I now work in the jail. Sheriff Labatt has been so kind to allow us to come in, and we've started this amazing new project called the Pre-Accusal Project. So pretty much the solicitor refers an individual to us, and then we go and we interview, and if they give consent, we get them out the next morning, they're enrolled, and then the solicitor drops the charges. I think Letitia would probably be better at explaining a little bit more in detail. I do more of like the groundwork. But I will say that out of the 633 active participants that we have now, 6 months prior to and after their first diversion, 558 of them were not rearrested. We have, I think, 86 or 87 people permanently housed as of last year. These are 87 people who chances are pretty high you will never see them inside the Fulton County Jail again. Am I missing anything? I'm so nervous right now. You guys are so
Well, listen, let me.
you guys are so intimidating.
Let me, well, they are, I'm not. Let me break the ice a little bit.
Okay, please.
Let me break the ice a little bit by asking you a question. If you're getting these recommendations from the Solicitor General's office, then you're dealing with misdemeanors, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And-
Mostly criminal trespass, minor shoplifting, soliciting, urinating and defecating in public.
Just
so.
public issues.
Correct.
So if it's prior to the first hearing, you apparently you're making contact with these individuals fairly quickly.
Absolutely.
Into the
The very
system.
same day.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
so do you have any idea what your average turnaround time is on the time you make contact with the individual to the time that the individual walks out the door and becomes part of your program?
Usually within 18 hours,
Okay, so less than a day.
less than a day.
Okay, very, very good.
Yeah. Sometimes 24, but usually it's around 18, 19 hours. I get there fairly quickly. As soon as the solicitor sends them to me, I'm there. I'm at the jail pretty much every day.
Okay, is this pretrial? Because the case still has to be adjudicated.
Well, actually, if they give consent and they meet our criteria and they come into our program, the case is not accused.
Then the case is dismissed.
Correct.
Thereby adjudicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
is it adjudicated as a, or is it a null pros, or is it, okay,
Yes.
so how does that happen? Does the solicitor General, and I don't know if you can answer this question or not, did they notify the arresting agency that they are choosing not to prosecute the case in lieu of?
I really don't want to. I can't answer
not
that
sure?
and give you
Okay.
a straight answer
that's
on
fine.
that.
Okay.
But what happens once they consent and we pick them up the next morning? A bond order is created fairly quickly. They're released to us. We have to sign off. If they complete enrollment, then I'll let the solicitor know, hey, this individual kept their word, they've completed enrollment, and we've started services. And then that's when the solicitor does the no process.
Right, and so there's a victim on a criminal trespass. Whether it's they went into somebody's house, they went into somebody's car, they went into somebody's, on somebody's property, not with the intent to commit another crime, but they just went onto somebody's property they weren't supposed to go into, restaurant, whatever. So I'm just curious as to how the communication process works, and I think that's probably a question better asked to the Solicitor General's office, and we can work on that.
Okay.
But I'm extremely impressed with the 18-hour turnaround. I'm impressed with the 24-hour turnaround from what we've heard. And I think when Sheriff Labatt came up here and testified, he spoke at how few misdemeanors are being held in the Fulton County Jail. And I can't help but assume that your program is one of the reasons why that number is so low.
Absolutely.
That y'all are, you sound like you're fairly aggressive with this, so I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Chairman Albers.
Thank you. Very impressive, to say the least. When did you begin this program with Solicitor Keith Gamage in his office?
October of 23.
Fantastic. So in that time, so it's still relatively new. Have you had any obstacles that has slowed that down or sped it up? And I'm really looking for best practices of what you're doing, because this is clearly something that's working well. And part of our process in this committee is to identify what's broken, but also what's working well, so we can magnify the good things.
What do you think's broken? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Letitia McCall. I work with. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. I can hear it now. Hi, I'm Letitia McCall. I think the process. So Drew didn't really give herself much credit. This program is run under like one person, and it's Drew, and she's the one who is really responsible for that 18-hour turnaround. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that that's run through one person. So we can replicate that on a larger scale with more than one person. I'm sure that, I think it will work. And I think that's kind of the answer. Right now we have one person doing this. And if we can be on the same page with this across the county, having a team to do some work like this, having people be in there screening the participants, making sure that their charge is actually divertible, so that we're not, they still meet the program, and maybe even looking at some of those charges to see, making sure that they are crimes of like lack of resources, and not so much just crimes, right? We're really focusing on people who need resources and who need skills for survival, and that's kind of what our focus is. That's why we work really hard to house people, to get them into treatment programs, because that's like the crux of it. So I think the answer to like what's broken is that there's not enough people doing it. Yeah, I think that's really it. There's not enough people doing it.
So who is it a 501c3?
Yes.
Okay, who owns the 501c3?
You mean who the executive director is?
Yes.
Moki Messias.
Okay. Where does the funding come from?
We have funding from different places. We're a small nonprofit, so we're getting grant funding from the county, the city, BJA, I believe, does some funding.
County and the city, so you're receiving money from Fulton County and the city of Atlanta?
I think so.
Okay.
That's more of a Moki question. Executive director, I'm a programs director.
If y'all could, if you could get that information
Sure.
to Allison, because one thing we discovered when we looked at the homeless and the unsheltered is we found that there was a lot of competition amongst a lot of 501c3s that we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And I think sometimes when we find programs that really work well, I think, you know, in the business world and everywhere else, we'd really like to focus the lion's share of our resources into those groups that tend to have the greatest success rate. And that way streamlining things and making them, like you said, you know, right now you have one person
Right.
doing it, and so it would be better to do something like that. What, Mike, are you on? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I have a question. First, I have a statement to Drew. Thank you for the work that you're doing. You shared that you yourself have spent time in the Fulton County Jail, and I just want to say that I think it's really wonderful that coming out that you are dedicating your time and efforts to a program like this that can be helpful to other people. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you for that. Now, you said, I'm wondering, over how much time would your program kind of follow a person? Obviously, it's a fairly new program. You mentioned kind of 6 months after, which is about at the point that we're at, but just in terms of planning, kind of how long are you following and tracking a person once you've gotten them into whatever various services that they need?
Yeah, so you're in luck. I just did our quarterly stats, so I have those. People stay with our program on an average of 9 months. It takes about 9 months to get the average person through their journey. And of course, that's average, so we got people who it takes a few months to do that, and they're further along the process, but we have a few people who takes a much longer to do that because, as we know, the journey to self-sustainability doesn't necessarily look like this.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit of that, you know, so we recognize that, and we actually prepare for that. We don't have a timeline or cutoff time period for anyone, so they can stay with our program until they're ready to leave it, and they can always come back. So if there's anything that happens that they need our resources for, they can come back.
Very good. Thank you.
Does once the individual completes the program, whether it's 6 months, 9 months, whatever, do you send some type of information back to the solicitor's office saying that the individual has completed the program?
Not for the specific individual. We don't do that because our program is very much so consent-based, and so we don't report back to the courts or anything, but we do let people know, like, this group of people did these things. So our stats are grouped. I mean, they're overall, of course, too, but they're also, we're grouping them so that we can tell people that your referrals resulted in this 6 months down the line, 1 year.
So
Things like that.
if it's a consent program and I'm charged with, let's say, criminal trespass, you get me out in 24 hours. The Solicitor General usually takes how long before he decides to null pros my case?
How long is that?
Is that fairly quickly?
In theory, it's
Well,
fairly quickly.
let's talk reality.
Sometimes it takes, like, for instance, when we had the shutdown in February,
Right.
those have yet to
Right.
been
But
handled because that's a big
yeah,
mess.
Let's
But
without
other
the
than that,
anomaly.
yes, about 48, 72 hours later.
Okay, so you get me out in 24 hours. Within 72 hours, my case is null prossed. Mm-hmm. And then I look at you and go, no thanks. I don't want to be a part of your program. I can do that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is that not a failure in the program and in the criminal justice process?
Well, I feel like our strength is our rapport building that we have with these individuals.
Right.
Because we're not like any other program.
Right.
We're not mandated. And so by not forcing them, it actually makes them they want to participate. We don't, they come in our space and just have coffee, and they're like, we have a living room setting and work on case management. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to just say,
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say that has anybody taken that path up till now? where they said no thanks, or they just didn't participate? Because of, and it could be because of addiction, it could be
Mental
because
health.
of mental health issues, it could be because of a variety of things. But have you had cases where individuals have said, no thanks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have.
And that's fair. And I want to point out something. You thanked us earlier for welcoming you into our space. I want to be perfectly clear. This is your space, okay? This power coming through these lights, all paid by taxpayers. So just want to be clear on that. Okay,
Yeah.
anything else y'all would like to tell us about PAD?
Also, that's not just the only path into our program. We also have partnered with 311, where the community can see something, say something, versus calling 911. They can call 311.
Now, let's be clear, 311 is a non-emergency number that a lot of municipalities have set up for citizens to call and report everything from potholes to stray dogs to even witnessing crimes and other things, correct? Yeah.
Yes. So 311, and also I participate in training at a lot of the police academy classes. So we pretty much let law enforcement know that we're here and we're an extra tool in your tool belt. If you see somebody that you feel like could benefit from the program versus arresting them over and over again, then they'll call us. And and to me, when you divert somebody and you really get to the goals and you really start making things happen, you're not just changing their life, you're changing their father's life, their mother's life, their daughter's life, their son's life. Like it helps the community in whole.
And I agree. And one thing I want to point out, and you're talking about the officers calling in. Right now, I think in the United States, we probably have just a little north of 800,000 law enforcement officers in a country of 300 plus million. And 99% of all law enforcement citizen contacts when it comes to violations are via 911 calls, where one citizen calls law enforcement on another citizen, whether it's a criminal trespass, whether it's public urination, like you were saying before, or something much, much, much more serious. And so to have these officers have an extra tool when it's something that's a lower tier violation, city ordinance violation, some of these other things, I think is extremely important and very useful. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you engaging with the law enforcement community that way.
Absolutely. And our newest partnership is Georgia State University officers. Yeah.
Great. Anything else?
I don't know, do you?
Hang on a second. What, Mike, 4?
Number one, appreciate y'all being here and for everything you're doing. This is a little bit different question. Since COVID, we've seen a spike in anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. In the detention center, are you seeing a higher number of our younger offenders having issues with depression or anxiety, mental health areas? Are we seeing a spike in that? And am I phrasing the question properly?
There's definitely trauma, absolutely, and we are seeing it in the younger individuals. It used to be a lot of the older population, and now it's pretty equal. So.
And the reason why I ask that, we know that with that spike that we've seen, especially in the schools, talking to counselors since COVID on that spike, I just think there's a correlation there, because there are some studies out there saying that individuals, some with anxiety, depression, are 3 times more likely to commit crimes. So I just was trying to get the correlation between the two.
Yes. I would say a good bit of our population that we work with does struggle with anxiety and mental health issues, for sure.
Safe to say we got a mental health issue in the country, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Drew, if I could ask you,
Yeah.
you say you go in and you interview these individuals and you do you conduct a survey? I mean, do you use a particular instrument?
I have a screening tool.
You have a screening tool. Now, how's the screening tool graded? Is it computer graded, or is it?
It's just based off of what we what we have seen since 2017.
Is criminal history any?
Okay. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more because I kind of created the screen tool.
Right.
So we use a few different tools. One that that encompasses mental health screening, so that we make sure the person is actually competent enough to do this. We're not screening as a licensed mental health professional or anything, but if they score on some of those questions where we should refer them to a psychologist beforehand, then we do that. And I think we've done that, maybe once or twice? Yeah.
Now, when you say beforehand, in other words, they see, you make that recommendation to the sheriff before they leave the detention center, that they be screened prior to entering your program, or is this a post-screening after they get out?
Right, so we made the recommendation
So straight to Grady?
Yes, to Grady. And we let Grady know that this person was referred to us by the solicitors, and we are unsure if they're competent enough to actually do the program or to complete this screening. And then they take it from
So
there.
do you wait till you get a confirmation from Grady before the individual's allowed to enter the program?
Yes.
Okay. And so Grady has a capacity to do that in a timely fashion, or does that
They're doing
individual?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the screening instrument, is it a single instrument? I know you said use multiple, but are they all
I put it
consolidated
together,
into a
yes.
single instrument? And are any of these instruments, and again, these are questions that have to be answered. I feel very positive about your program, but are any of these instruments, are they certified through any particular association, or is this something that's just in-house that y'all created based on the knowledge that you have of what's going on in the community?
It's a little bit of both. I took I can't remember the official name of it, but I took one of them from SAMHSA, and I pushed it, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what SAMHSA stands for.
That's
Y'all
okay.
are good. Okay. I put it with a few of them from the NAMI, and then I just used some of the questions that we had in our own intake to make sure that, one, that their mental health is okay enough for us to work with them, and that they meet the qualifications for us to be a part of the program. And then after that, then we talk about what are the needs to make sure that we're actually the right program for them. So then once we do their intake and everything else, like half of those questions are already answered. So yeah, it's a combination of a bunch of different things. And it's what, 9 pages?
I think front and back 4.
4.
4 front and back. So it's
So
Eight pages, yeah.
Okay. So who sets the standard? PAD sets the standard of what
Yes.
is a entry and what is a denial?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Chairman Payne?
Thank you for being here. And my question is, since all this is pre-arraignment, so what happens, you said it's majority of people, y'all are able to work with, but in that 1% that you're not, what happens? I mean, because if the court's the reason I ask is we used to do this pre-adjudication. I would meet with kids and families with minor charges, but the court still held that case. So and it was a pre-adjudication agreement. It was, what we call an informal adjustment. An informal adjustment is where the kid and the family agreed to go through this 90-day process with conditions, and if they got through the 90 days and met all their conditions, including the counseling, then they went on their happy, merry way. But if they didn't, then we still had the teeth to be able to come back and say, this person is not suitable, they're not, agreeing to mental health that you've ordered, that we've ordered, that needs to happen. How do you put teeth in the back, rather than just getting them out of jail and saying, and if they don't meet if y'all can't treat them, or if they're just opposed to it, how do you arrange?
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about the first part, and then you can talk about the outreach. So this program was developed because there were a lot of people who were arrested on divertible charges that had been open during those hours. They could have been diverted, so they wouldn't have had that charge to begin with. And so we want to keep that part in mind because we're still pre-arrest diversions. So we're operating from that mindset and not so much as a program that people can be ordered to go to. So if they were to be diverted at the time of arrest, they wouldn't have had to go to a program. So we're keeping that as well.
Excuse me, you just said pre-arrest diversion.
Yes, so that's what
Some
that'll be
people in your
diversions.
program are pre-arrest diversions? Because everybody y'all have talked about are post-arrest diversions, pre-trial diversions.
Yes, both. So what Drew had mentioned earlier, the police
When-
officers can call
Right.
us. That would be a
The
pre-arrest.
311 calls are pre-arrest diversion.
Yes.
Right. And the Rice Street calls are
Post-arrest.
pre-trial, pre-trial diversions. And to Chairman Payne's question, though, is if again, the individual that comes in and says, yes, I want to be in your program, 72 hours later, they say, I changed my mind. If there's a null pros, as opposed to, say, a dead docket or something like that, then the individual just goes away?
You want to do that?
So the solicitor's office and PAD work on a trust basis. So if the individual gets out and does not complete enrollment, I have to report that back to the solicitor. I have to do that.
Right.
And as far as accountability goes, we have some participants who have come into the program who had open cases. We have a legal care navigator who supports this person.
To be clear, the open cases they have are not the case you got them out on, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
This is totally different. So, a lot of our participants get FTAs because they're unhoused. So the court date goes basically into the air because they don't have an address. So we have a legal care navigation side that actually focuses on court dates, probation, parole, stuff of that nature, and she makes sure that everybody knows when they have a court date coming up, when they have to complete anger management, all this stuff. She tracks all of this and makes sure that everybody is held accountable.
Right, but what if somebody chooses not to be in this program since it's voluntary and their case was null pros based on the understanding that they were going to participate in the program? Where
I
what
have to
Chairman Payne's saying is
report
they've
that.
signed something saying if they don't,
My suggestion to
Yeah.
you, I mean, I think it actually would be to put some conditions in place that, it's saying that pre-arraignment on the charges they've been charged with, that if they would like to take part in your program, they sign something that said they're going to attend appointments, they're going to attend counseling as prescribed, they're going to do these basic minor things, nothing major. It's not like being fined or anything, but just at least it gives them some teeth that they're going to participate in the program. And if they don't participate in the program, then it gives you the ability to go back to the solicitor and saying they're not participating, and then the solicitor can then make the decision because it's been pre-arraignment.
Right.
Then the solicitor still has the ability to say you've got a court date.
I understood. I will take that suggestion back. Yeah.
For the people going through your program to understand, you're choosing this. And
This is
because that's an empowering process. When they get to choose a path rather than this path, it empowers them. So
Absolutely.
and so that gives them a little bit more emphasis. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I abide by my conditions of that pre-arraignment agreement.
Okay.
And so I just think that might be something you might want to look at.
I will definitely take that back to the team and talk about that for sure. And also, I just wanted to be understood, we don't do this work alone. So we're a linkage of services. So we refer people to a lot of things. We have a lot of relationships with a lot of people, Women on the Rise, Living on Purpose ATL, Swim Foundation, Center for Employment Opportunities, which focuses, they only employ people who actively are on probation and parole sentences. So we partner with a lot of people. We do not do this work alone. We can't. There's so much there's so much the city needs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we do appreciate y'all's time today,
Yeah.
and thank y'all for
Thank you.
bringing your program forth.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I felt a little better at the end. It wasn't.
I told you they're intimidating, but they're not that bad. I'm really.
Thank you.
Okay, Roberta Myers with Legal Action Center.
Good morning. My husband will be a little upset. Douglas. Douglas is my surname. I must say that out loud. Oh, good morning. I actually just wanted to come here briefly. I'm from the Legal Action Center. I'm the Vice President of State Strategy and Reentry. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that fights to build health equity, restore opportunity for people with arrest and criminal records, and also individuals with substance use histories. And we do a lot of work across the country, working with organizations, these wonderful organizations that are in the community, on the ground, really trying to solve and bring solutions that are at the direction of community into the forefront around public safety related issues. And what's been really important for me with some of the issues we've seen with Fulton County overcrowding and talking about all of the different system actors that are engaged in trying to figure out what to do. Community had been kind of left out of the discussion. And I'm so excited for you all to hear today the partnership and the arm and the role that they have in bringing results and really supporting the folks and looking to accomplish the public safety goals that we all want to see. And so I've been fangirling over here. This is my daughter. This is my daughter, and she's someone who beat the odds, that typically is attached to children with incarcerated parents. Her father had been in and out of jail and prison most of her life. And so I just think it's important for you all to see, usually the folks who are in community and dedicated to running these nonprofit organizations, these are folks who are directly impacted, who've lived it. They have the answers, they have the solutions, and they have the passion and compassion to bring about a lot of the changes that we need and that people need, and can do it from a place as a peer. And so I want to emphasize that I've been watching a lot of the hearings, and I've been hearing all of the requests for additional funds, some to create and build a new jail, some, to build and stronger infrastructure within our judicial system. But I also want to add that we need to look to these organizations where we have peers who are very capable, and we have a lot of expansion of services that we can provide to really find the solutions that we're talking about. And so what I've been hearing this morning when we talk about solicitors and the DAs, and then also the public defenders and the judges sitting and reviewing and analyzing many of the cases of folks who are languishing within these jails, I do believe that we have many folks, and I've heard it from a lot of the judges, some of the challenges that they have with even getting people through, on their dockets and off the dockets and out, leaning on community to support some of that review and analysis that could determine what kind of care and services can be provided to get to the root cause of why people ended up in that situation to begin with. And so I hope that you'll push the county to give you more information. I hope that you all in the ooh, that was not good. In the last meeting, I think it was Monday, whatever day it was. I know it was sometime this week. Sometime this week, there was even talk about the budget around capital, fixing the building, or about an audit. It was about auditing some of the budgetary issues and really analyzing how money has been spent. I want to emphasize, please request this information, because it's important to look at, are they investing in partnering with organizations like the ones that you've seen? Are they really putting money into maintaining and taking care of these facilities that the taxpayers are putting in their hands to be responsible for. I just want you to hopefully push them a little bit more on that, because you can put someone in a brand new house, you could put someone in a brand new car, but if they don't know how to take care of it, they're gonna run it to the ground, everything's gonna fall apart, and we can't allow for that. So I'm hoping that you'll push more on the accountability about how this facility, and if you go to think about looking across the state, because there's a lot of issues in other jails that's coming up with more deaths, overcrowding. It's an issue that's plaguing us for some of the reasons that we're talking about, the increased concerns we're having with folks with mental illness and the challenges that we're seeing with our young people, and some of the things that they're getting into. There's just more need. And so I just want to leave you with that, and I just came to just emphasize that community-based organizations are an essential part of the way we view public safety and bringing together all the appropriate actors to be engaged in that.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Oh, one other thing. I did share, and I'm happy to share a PowerPoint. Senator Robinson, I met with you, I don't remember when it was, maybe a month ago, but I want to make sure the full committee, because I've shared some reports that have been done offering several recommendations on ways Fulton County Jail can be depopulated, and many of them, some have been acted upon, and some you've heard about through other testimony before this body, but there's still some things that they haven't done. And so I want to make sure that you all get that, and I'm happy to share the PowerPoint, and it has direct links to some of these reports.
Yes, please get that to Ms. Bailey as soon as you
Absolutely.
can.
I have.
Just prior to the committee, because the next step will be each individual senator making recommendations to the committee as a whole, and then the committee voting and prioritizing recommendations and putting them in our final report. So please get that to her as soon as you can.
Absolutely. Later today, you'll look for it.
right.
Thank you.
Shane Sims, Passion on Purpose.
Shane Sims and principles over passions. But that's fine.
No,
Principles over passion.
okay, somebody
sir.
wrote it on here wrong, I guess.
That's okay. That's okay. Good morning again. My name is Shane Sims, and I'm also Executive Director of People Living in Recovery. And what we are is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Athens, Georgia, that provides services to individuals and families that suffer from substance use disorder, mental health, and homelessness challenges. And specific to today, also, we deal with reentering citizens. I'm also the founder of Principal of Passion Consultancy, and we're a specialized firm that provides support and also collaboration and consultancies to returning citizen or criminal justice involved individuals, as well as organizations and institutions that are touch points for these individuals. We have a primary focus on behavioral health issues through Principal of Passion Consultancy, and that kind of segues into my presentation before you today. Specifically about programs, about 2.5 years ago, my office was contacted by the Vera Institute of Justice, and the Vera had gotten our organization name, my name specifically, and the District Attorney of Athens Clarke County about our collaboration and work together. And what the Vera Institute said is that they're funding prosecutors and nonprofit organizations across the country. I think there were 10 in total that have proven relationships in order to create diversionary programs for individuals charged with felony offenses. And the premise is that a diversionary program for misdemeanor offenses existed all across the country, but there were very few for felony offenses. And they're finding that individuals that commit felony offenses were more open and susceptible to the life-changing effects of diversionary program, but just didn't qualify for it. And so
Real quick,
yes, sir.
could you spell the name of the group that reached into you? The
Vera Institute.
Vera?
Yes, sir.
V-E-R-A?
V-E-R-A.
Okay, I think
Yes,
I am
sir.
familiar with them. Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so the district attorney's office and myself worked together to create a diversionary program, which today is called Principles Over Passion program. But that program focused specifically on individual that were criminal justice involved to the extent that their charges had risen to felony offenses. Most had started out as misdemeanors. And the program is taking place in the Athens Clarke County Jail. I would go in and meet with a group of guys, usually about 20, and it's broken down to 10 people in each group, and have an 8-week, 3-day-a-week program facilitation with them. When I meet with the guys, the premises is that the ACEs study got it right. In mid-90s, the ACEs concluded that children that have 2 or more unresolved instances of trauma are more likely to commit criminal offenses, more likely to engage in early promiscuity, more than likely to end up in the criminal justice system, and have up to 25 years of their life expectancy cut down. And I knew this to be true not just from a professional standpoint, but also from lived experience. That was actually my experience. During my senior year of high school in Athens, instead of going off to college to West Georgia to be a physical therapist as planned, I found myself being sentenced to life plus 15 years in prison for accessory charges. And it wasn't until after my sentencing, standing in my cell one day, that I connected the dots for myself. And of course, this is before the conclusion of the study, of ACE's study. And I remember standing in my cell this night, looking out this small glass window to Lexington Road, and realizing that I would probably never see that road again. And I remember just tears rolling down my eyes. And the tears did not necessarily come from me bemoaning the fact that I had gotten into this situation, but it came from the realization that I knew why I was so hurt, why I was so angry. And it traced back to a very traumatic experience with my parents at about the age of 12. And it was me coming upon my parents doing the drug of crack cocaine. And in context, the crack cocaine epidemic was in full-blown operation then. And I remember my peers' parents falling victim, or parent falling victim. And I remember at one point thinking that, you know, my mom and dad must be, you know, Superman and Superwoman, because we still had Christmases, we still engaged in social activities. And one evening, while in the hallway of my home, I actually peeped into a room and I saw my parents doing the drug of crack cocaine. And that really changed the trajectory of my life. I was able to maintain, because school was easy for me. I was a sociable kid. However, that anger persisted, that hurt persisted, that longing to belong persisted until my senior year in high school. And I kind of came at this fork in the road, whereas either I was going to give into that hurt or I was going to overcome it, but I did not have the proper support, so I gave into that hurt. So I say that to say I bring these experiences, as well as my professional training, to bear in Principles Over Passion, the classes that are facilitated at Athens Clarke County Jail. And one of the things that I do with the guys that are in my class, and unfortunately it's just men right now, is I let them understand that maladaptive behaviors is not a reflection of who you are. It's usually a reflection of what has been done to you. And the biggest challenge in these groups is to get the man to acknowledge pain, hurt that is buried deep. And one of the things that I found is that more often than not, that pain tied around sexual molestation, even for men, and also abandonment issues. And one of the things that I tell the men through Principles of Passion, that I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to give you the tools to do the work on yourself. And throughout the 8 weeks, and again, we meet 3 times a week. Usually the class is between an hour and a half to 2 hours. One section meet on Monday.
So to be
Yes,
clear,
sir.
you meet 24 times?
Yes, sir.
And this program is only in the Clarke County Jail right now?
Right now it's only in the Clarke County
Do you know
Jail.
what the population of the Clarke County Jail is by any chance?
I do not know, but I can't get that
Okay,
information.
so how many men are currently in your program in the Clarke County Jail?
There are 20 men in the program divided into 2 classes, so there are 10 to 11 men in each class.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, you're welcome. And so the funding for this program from the Vera Institute was a year. It took a minute to get started with the program, but at the conclusion of the funding, Vera did kind of a preliminary study of the men that were in the program and that actually were diverted instead of being prosecuted, instead of having their case adjudicated. And they did a study of 5 of the men who were released at the discretion of the district attorney's office. And the preliminary studies came back, and it was pretty heartening. One of the things that we use is a Partner for Change outcome management system. That's what we use to track data. That it also tracks strengths, resiliences, and the chances of reoffending. And according to our tracking mechanism of the 5 men that they studied, 0 of those men were rearrested. It also studied, did they increase their recovery capital? And that's simply the mechanism to help you to maintain recovery, to help you maintain a healthy lifestyle. And what they found that 4 of the 5 did increase their recovery capital. 2 of the 5 did have re-engagement with law enforcement officers, but nothing that reached the magnitude of rearrest. Of the 5, 2 of them relapsed on substance use disorder. However, they were able to revert to their recovery capital in order to maintain a lifestyle on the other side of the
Okay,
law.
so if you could run through that real quick, out of the 5, you had
Yes,
2
sir.
relapses on substance abuse.
Yes, sir.
2 had contact with law enforcement, but nothing that reached the level of being rearrested.
Yes, sir.
And then the 5th one?
Yes, and there were
The 5th one
0
was
rearrests. There were
rearrest?
no rearrests at all
Okay,
amongst that 5 group.
so your program, of course, it's pre-trial because they're in a county jail.
Yes, sir.
Do you submit is this a certificate or something of completion that an individual would take pre-trial, or they would go through the trial and present it at sentencing, or how does that work?
No, sir. It is pre-trial. It's a certificate of completion. If, let's say, that just kind of.
Are particular charges allowed into this, or is it every charge?
It's every charge with an intention to felony offenses. So
Say the last part again?
it's every charge with a kind of intentionality to target individual with felony offenses.
Okay, so you're targeting an individual with a felony offense. Help me understand the value, and this is, like I said, we have to ask questions
sir.
that aren't always comfortable. Help me understand the value of an individual in jail charged with aggravated assault, family violence. He's assaulted his wife brutally. He goes in there and says, okay, Judge, since my arrest, and this is pre-trial.
Sure.
So the evidence is the evidence. Something that someone did post-offense, pre-trial, help me understand the value of that in the court, because I don't see how that could be admissible
Sure.
in relation to the charge. It would only be admissible, I would think, post-conviction, when trying to show the court that there's opportunity for rehabilitation,
Right, correct.
possibly. So,
Yeah,
am I-
no,
am I
thank you.
losing-
No, you're not. You're not.
Okay.
And thank you for your insight, of course. I would take a second to say that this is my first time having a Senate appearance, and I saw it as this thing, but you are asking some very insightful questions. To me, it's encouraging. So we have 2 phases of guys that come into principal of passion program. There are those that are going to go into the criminal justice system regardless, and then there are those that will ultimately be released, which most of them will be released. And so although initially it started out as a pre-child diversionary program, when the judge saw the efficacy, when the jail saw the efficacy of the program, they want to expand it to men that may actually go through the criminal justice system, because the idea is that majority of the people that go into the criminal justice system will one day return to our community. And if we don't catch these guys at a time when they're vulnerable and believe in them enough to send them into the system with tools to survive the system, then chances are they're going to go in, and the system going to exacerbate anything bad that exists in their life to begin with. And so there are 2 focuses on there. Yes, sir.
And do you ever find a benefit that you improve the behavior of the individual while they're in the jail, going
Absolutely.
through the process?
Absolutely.
We in Muskogee County, we started something probably 15 years ago called the Fatherhood Dorm, where fathers who were in jail that had displayed the right behavior,
Yes, sir.
weren't disruptive, weren't gambling, weren't
Yes,
doing
sir.
all the other things, they were able to move into a dorm with other fathers. And what we found was the opportunity for them to misbehave, if you will, while awaiting trial diminished greatly,
Right.
because they were individuals coming in, explaining to them the importance of being a father, how to be a father from inside of a county jail, how to be a father from inside of a prison, if that's where the case ended up. And so the behavior within the jail actually was better than what we would have had, we feel, if they'd have been in Gen Pop with others who did not have the same life in family circumstances as they did. So
sir.
you see in your program that behavior is better?
That's exactly what Principal Passion evolved into. After the first program, they actually give me dedicated dorms now. And the reason because the officer reported that incidents of violence, incidents of infraction inside the dorm went down to pretty much zero. And that was one of the things that I told the jails is that I would not facilitate this program if the guys couldn't be inside of a supportive environment, because to take them out of a supportive environment to a classroom, to pour into them all these good things, and they have to go back and survive inside an environment that's still predominantly whatever it was, it's going to be difficult for them to practice that enough for it to become a behavior pattern. And so the jail agreed, and so I just graduated the third cohort, so each cohort has its own dorm, and it does improve behavior. So I have two cases in point. I'm going to call the first guy JM for the sake of protecting his anonymity, but JM was a guy that was in one of my first Principal Passion class, and he was one of the ones that unfortunately would go through the criminal justice system. And so I always tailored my one-on-ones with him to the extent of saying, hey, you carry into this situation whatever will carry you through this situation. And of course, I used my own lived experience, having served 20 years in the criminal justice system and coming out today and actually being a chaplain for the Athens Clarke County Police Department as kind of proof that if I can do it, you can do it. And he absorbed those principles. He absorbed the understanding, the belief that I am better than my worst mistakes. And he was one of the first ones to really openly acknowledge molestation as being a part of the trauma and he was a 42-year-old man. And he openly cried in class, but he said, you know what, I'm not going to allow that to hold me captive. And he did every homework assignment. He became the class valedictorian, as I call them, and he, sure enough, went through the criminal justice system. He came out of jail after about 10 months, and he went home to his father. His father and his brother were still engaging in substance use disorder. And he called me and he said, Shane, one of the things you always told us is that if no matter where we are, we have access to you. He said, listen, I'm here. He said, I'm doing well, but I don't want to stay in this environment. So I'm also co-director of Modern Pathway to Recovery, 12-month inpatient treatment for men. And he said, would you give me a bed space within Modern Pathways? Because if I stay inside this environment, I know what's going to happen. And he came into Modern Pathways, and today JM has a side hustle, which is his painting business. He works for a painting company. He has a great, healthy relationship. The lady that he's in a relationship with, he is actually a father figure. I hate to say stepfather, but father figure to her child, and has given her space. And just watching how this one individual that gets better has begun to affect kind of this economy of people, to me is proof positive that if someone is able to really to come to grips with what has caused a maladaptive behavior, and they are in a supportive environment or program to deal with those things, that they can become better. The second man, and I'm going to call him PM, for the sake of anonymity, I know that these are filmed. He was the same way, older gentleman. Now, when I say older, I mean he was about 62, and he also
So he was my age.
older.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said older.
Yeah.
I didn't say old. But he went into the criminal justice system as well. And of course he had some odds stacked against him because of his age. And he went in and he maintained contact. In fact, he had his counselor at the institute he was in to call me because they had spoken so much of me. And so we connected. He came out, and man, he's out now. He's a grandfather. He's an active father. He called me the other day and said that he finally got the surgery to have his teeth replaced. And so he has a beautiful smile again, and all these things build his confidence. And he did not have to transition to treatment. However, the principles that he learned through the program has enabled him to come out and to really take advantage of the opportunities that he
Mr.
had.
Sims, I do appreciate it, and
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate the success that you've had. I'll go ahead and ask any committee members if they have any questions so we can kind of stay on time, because we
Yes,
have
sir.
a couple of committee members that have other obligations too. Is there any intent or is there any intention to move your program beyond the Clarke County Jail?
There is, but maybe not now. So I do want to direct you to a recovery community organization here in Fulton County, like the one that I
Okay.
direct in
Yeah, if you
Athens.
could, yeah.
It's called Rise to Recovery.
Right.
Rise to Recovery is one, and the other is called the Stop. And my reason for being before you today is to encourage you to engage the recovery community organization, because staffed by individuals with lived experience and evidence-based training, and these type of programs can be created in that context.
I do appreciate that.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Any committee questions? Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the last presenter on the list today, which is from the Rambo Solutions, Mr. Charles Rambo.
Right. Good morning to everyone. If I could I give you these folders here? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I should have actually given them out earlier.
Again, good morning. My name is Charles Rambo. I am the Chief Development Officer for Rambo Solutions, LLC. I am also a 34-year veteran of the Fulton County Sheriff's Office with a background in homicide investigations, gang investigations. I'm also certified as a FAA Part 107 drone operator, SWAT, gang intelligence, you name it, pretty much I've done it all. To our colleague here with inside the Sheriff's Office, I'm also a senior instructor as well as one of the 5th senior deputies in the state of Georgia that has actually completed that program. I've taught at the Georgia Sheriff's Association on all aspects of the Sheriff's Office. I have to admit, and I just want to take the opportunity, not necessarily to apologize, but for you to understand the context of something I said at the beginning of the year. I was contacted and asked about the nature of this particular subcommittee hearing. I had my doubts, and for good reason. I hope you will appreciate it. In 2005, we had some of the same type of hearings under what was called the Fulton County Blue Ribbon Commission Study. And it was the guise under of trying to abolish or otherwise appoint the Fulton County Sheriff, of which I testified here and was able to provide successful testimony that helped to block that particular legislation. So far from what I've heard of you guys throughout this process, I want to tell you thank you for staying on task, staying on focus as to what the real square issues and not having any ultimate underlying agendas. So please accept my appreciation for that. I'm here this morning, and I appreciate all of these groups that are here trying to find reentry programs to get people back out into mainstream society. However, what we have to deal with, as you can appreciate of working in a sheriff's office or any correctional facility, we have to deal with internal order and discipline. We have to be able to control those particular inmates that otherwise would not want to be cooperative, that do not seek a life of trying to rehabilitate, and we must be able to keep those persons under control and wraps. What I want to present to you today for your consideration, I sent this all to you all in email to the House subcommittees on public safety as well as Homeland Security, a bill, or should I say draft legislation, that I pray that you guys will take into consideration, and it's called the Georgia Jail Violence and Contraband Prevention Act. I led several missions from 2009 to 2016 at the Fulton County Jail with great success, where we really experienced zero to no violence as you're seeing today. As you know, there are wheelbarrows of contraband from weapons that have been made from out of materials inside of the jail. And I want to tell whoever that was the other day, thank you for taking the boldness of putting the Board of Commissioners on constructive notice that the Fulton County Jail is the property asset management of the Board of Commissioners under law and not the sheriff. However, there are provisions that the sheriff is responsible for in making sure that the operations of that jail meet internal order and discipline and will not spill into the community. With inside of this, I just want to give a little small context, and what I can appreciate about this is that we used to have CompStat sessions that I implemented in 2009 that helped get us from up under a federal consent decree. And just like here, we have a podium and we have a panel, and we ask the crucial questions for evidence-based management of what was going on up on those floors. We held commanders 100% accountable for knowing about the day-to-day operations, everything from locks to mechanical failures to inmate behaviors, gang awareness. All of these were things that I put into place in 2009. As you will see here on the side note of the addendum, you will see the CompStat program that was put into place that led to 95% or better 95% or better compliance ratings with the federal consent decree that ended it ultimately in 2015. You also see that I had implemented a procedure, and it's post-approved, called correctional intelligence, where we partnered with our federal, state, and local gang investigators, and not only were we able to curb violence and contraband inside of the jail, we were also able to help them to assist in solving crimes out inside of the community based upon our internal intelligence network. Also, I believe one of the senators asked of the current sheriff, what is being done in terms of prosecution of those persons who are in possession of contraband? And it is almost disheartening to hear that that's not a priority. And that's the reason why this Contraband Act is, yes, sir. Please.
Just stand. I believe I asked the sheriff the question, was anyone being charged with interference to government property because of the 1,000 doors and the toilets that are being damaged? And the sheriff's response was, when they were able to determine who had actually done the damage, whether it was from video or whatever, they were doing it there, because you as a law enforcement officer and I and others sitting around this table that are law enforcement officers also understand that if you arrest somebody for armed robbery and they're in the back of the patrol car and they kick the window out, that is interference with government property, thereby an additional charge, because that vehicle belongs to the taxpayers. And a lot of people said, well, they've already gone to jail for armed robbery. Why worry about that? Because of opportunities for restitution, and plus we are accountable as public servants to all damage to any property that belongs to the citizens. Therefore, we're obligated to make those charges. But the question I asked him was in relation to the damage caused inside the jail. It was not in relation to the contraband that was recovered inside the jail. And so, to be fair, I'm not sure if they are or are not being charged for possession of the contraband.
Well, let me bring a correlation in between that, and that's for any sheriff, so I'm not just taking a stab at the current sheriff. When you say interference and destruction of property, as you can see, when you see wheelbarrows of locks and doors that are being carted before the county commissioners as well as the city council, that is the direct relationship to the destruction of that particular property. That's why in our CompStat, and I heard another senator talk about KPIs, key performance indicators, I developed what was called a balanced scorecard, a Kaplan-based scorecard that was recommended by the Harvard Kennedy School of Government when you do CompStat style analysis. And that required for us to put in a simple process called a maintenance request form.
I just want to be really clear. I know you keep using the word CompStat.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity years ago to visit the New York City Police Department and look at their CompStat system that I think was probably initiated by Bill Bratton when he was there. And basically what it is it's intelligence-based policing.
Correct.
It's in order to gather intel to try to determine where the hot spots are, where to move your resources. And so I think what you're saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is basically inside of our county jails to look at issues within the county jail that, whether it's gang violence or whatever, maybe a similar type intel gathering process. So, and that goes beyond the typical classification, because as you are aware, when an individual comes into the jail, they are classified based on criminal history, health care, mental health issues, type of crime that they're there on that time, so that we are not putting those who have a tendency to assault other individuals, whether it's sexually or physically, into the same areas with more vulnerable citizens, and to try to segregate based on established scientific tools within there. Now, I do have a concern, and I think this is something that I need to bring forth. Now, this draft here, this legislation here, now this was signed by the governor because the sponsor of this legislation was the majority whip of the Senate, Senator Randy Robertson, dealing with bringing contraband across guard lines by contractors, by employees and others, and was co-sponsored by members of this committee. And so I know this is done, but in full transparency, are you a candidate for the sheriff of Fulton County?
Yes, I am a candidate, but I did not introduce myself as such.
No, sir, you did not.
Yes.
And with the media in the room, I will tell you, they are very intelligent people. We don't have to introduce ourselves for them to understand. And what I want to make sure of is if you want to discuss the overcrowding issues in the jail and what you feel may be the causation of some of that, and I appreciate you following along in the committee hearings and what you said about the county commission hearings and the others, then you're more than welcome to do that. But I have to tell you, and we said this from the very beginning, Chairman Albert said it across the street standing in the park, this is not a political platform for anyone. All of us are running for office. None of us are using this committee in that capacity. And so I would appreciate the utmost respect for this subcommittee as you provide your testimony that this is not a campaign speech. This is not about things you wish to implement should you become the sheriff of Fulton County. Because if that's the case, Mr. Rambo, then I would respectfully ask you to end your testimony. And we appreciate you coming and visiting. And if I feel that it's leaning in the political direction, then I'll end the testimony myself with all due respect.
And thank you. And
Thank you.
I appreciate that, very straightforward, but let me say it back as straightforward. I did not introduce myself, nor did I brand or label myself as a candidate. What I am introducing is a concern for contraband and violence that's wreaking not only the Fulton County Jail, but also your Department of Corrections. And that is a direct correlation to the safety of our citizens.
And I agree with you on that. I just want to make sure that we're transparent.
Yes, sir.
And focused, and that everybody sitting on this committee, who I have the utmost respect for, that they don't think I'm allowing politics into a subcommittee to when I was assigned to this position by Chairman Albers, it was agreed upon that politics would not have any role in what we do in this subcommittee. And I appreciate you respecting that. You can
Absolutely.
Please continue.
Thank you, and I appreciate that robust understanding. Again, the key concern right now is the level of violence, not only, again, since I can take it out of the context of Fulton County, you can look in Clayton, you can look also in the Department of Corrections, where many of the inmates flow into the facilities. It was even the Department of Corrections that contacted the Fulton County Jail trying to find out these measures of what we were doing between 2009 and 16 that was so successful that they sent even their Department of Corrections intelligence group up to us in order to understand the trends, the flow, because the majority of the inmates were flowing into that particular Department of Corrections through Jackson and to all the other satellite facilities. Again, I'm more concerned above politics. I'm more concerned above politics that we must have some type of preemptive law that will allow for sheriffs as well as for corrections officers, anyone who deals with a correctional facility, to have a Contraband Elimination Act that deals with it almost the same way that we deal with the Georgia Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. There needs to be enhancements as well as stiffer and stricter penalties for those persons who possess any type of weapon that will harm our officers, our deputies, of inmates as well as persons within inside of the community.
And I think what you'll find in the legislation that was signed by the governor, not only does it target what you and I both know are the primary sources of contraband coming into the jail, which are employees, contractors, and other individuals. It's not always drones. There's not some tunnel being dug under the jails and this contraband coming in that way. And not only does it have the individual charged criminally, but it also enhances slightly the monetary amount, but substantially the amount of time they could spend on probation. because I think you and I both know that the Georgia Post pulls certification on more law enforcement officers than any other Peace Officers Standards Training Council in the United States of America. But we always have the fear that someone who has violated a policy or a rule or a law previously in their career will find a way to slide back in. And so we have to be careful of that. We also noticed several years ago that gangs were encouraging their partners, whether they were husbands, wives, girlfriends, or boyfriends, to apply for jobs within sheriff's offices and within our Department of Corrections, because those individuals tended to have no criminal history, and they would come in and work as a conduit for their gang member, family member, to infiltrate our prisons and our jails.
May I
And
add to
so-
that portion?
Yes,
If
yes,
you'll note that-
in just 1 second.
Oh, please.
And so, I think you've struck a nerve to where we do understand the importance of managing contraband, and while we continue to pass legislation, we must continue to work because it is an ongoing problem, which I think the Fulton County Sheriff came in last week, and they had their latest sweep had turned up even more shanks and homemade knives and other weapons there on Rice Street. So we have to find the right thing. And what I would really love to hear you tell me is, when the DOC came to meet with you guys to see what y'all were doing, tell us what you were doing that solved that problem back then.
Well, thank you. Again, what we were doing was a process called investigative intelligence cell searches. These were not just focused on honey buns and extra sheets and things of that nature. We were actually targeting and looking at those gang members who were a direct representation to the internal order and discipline problems of the jail. From that, because the majority of the gang population was shifting into the Georgia Department of Corrections, and they understood we had a contact. I don't want to mention or give them any glamorization in terms of their names, but many of the inmates went into the system and said, you can't do in Fulton County like you used to, and the Department of Corrections were able to use some of that intelligence that we provided to them, as well as some of the core objectives that we taught in the class, to take back to their facilities, and they were able to really focus on the connection and the nexus between Fulton County and the Georgia Department of Corrections, where the majority of the gangs were
And
coming
Mr. Rambo,
from.
what years were you at the Fulton County Jail?
Actually, I helped to open the place in 1989.
Okay.
So I've been there since the beginning, but the most comprehensive in the body of work we're talking about here was from 2009 to 2016.
Okay, during that time, did y'all employ employees whose responsibility was to identify gang members and gang affiliations?
That's correct. That was one of the initiatives out of the CompStat unit, was called the Sheriff Tactical Intelligence Network Group, STING.
Okay. Did y'all use a particular classification model in order to determine how you would house these individuals based on gang affiliation?
We would first and foremost qualify them according to the statute of the Criminal Street Gang Terrorism Prevention Act to make sure that, number one, they were an actual gang member. From there, then we went to our classification system and determined how to best classify those persons according to, as you said, the scientific model of age, type of crime committed, criminal history, what have you. And I promise you, when you look at the federal consent decree order in that time, gang violence was all the way down.
How long was Fulton County under a federal consent decree in the past?
Well, which one do you want to begin with?
The one that you currently was talking about.
It lasted from 2008 up until 2015. And then, of course, we've always had the famous Fambro versus Fulton County that I began up under in 1989, Foster versus Fulton County. So there have been so many, but the most significant was the last one that we came from up out of in 2015.
So in 2015, Fulton County had complied with all conditions of the federal consent decree and were released?
All 15 key compliance areas.
Okay, thank you.
To the last point that you made, and I'll end my testimony, is that when you look at the type of employees that are hired nowadays, the popular term on the international scene. Again, I'm trained by the Department of Homeland Security as an intelligence analyst, and one of the key concerns we have now is malign influences. We're not just talking about malign influences that come from international theaters. We're talking about domestic malign influences that are intentionally getting into sheriff's offices, correctional facilities, as well as police departments to be the inside source that will give back information and otherwise there to try to disrupt constitutional governance in order to be able to take over conditions to make it to seem as if they're the insurgents, to make it look like we're in charge and we're going to challenge constituted government. So we have to be very meticulous and careful about who we're hiring nowadays. Be ye male, female, doesn't make a difference. We've got to be able to get into some more robust ways of getting qualified staff that can apply. And as you know, that's like pulling a needle out of a haystack.
Well, would you not agree that the Marine Corps does a really good job with it by not lowering their standards and continuing to raise their standards, even though they may be undermanned, if you will, for lack of a better term, that and what we found in many law enforcement agencies post-COVID is that a lowering of the standards where behavior that is currently accepted was not accepted when I was hired in '85 and you came on, that we were held to a higher standard. And I worked in groups where we were subject to polygraph examinations at the whim of a supervisor or drug tests at the whim of a supervisor in order to maintain integrity of the unit. Do you feel that raising the standards for law enforcement today would be a step in the right direction to prevent this infiltration that you speak of?
Well, you said it very correctly when you identified the Marines. That's why they call themselves the few and the proud.
Yes, sir.
They're not necessarily after every one. But I have to also go to my branch of service, Air Force. We aim high. We want to make sure that we're getting the most qualified. So, as you said, you cannot lower the standard, but you can do a lot. And I'm a great fan of the SEAL team that otherwise uses a very small contingency to get the job done no matter where they're sent.
Thank you, Mr. Rambo. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Does any committee members have any questions? Okay, if not, Mr. Rambo, I do appreciate your time, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
All right. That is the end of the list of those who have signed up to testify. Is there anybody else here that wishes to be heard? Okay, if not, then I'll let you know this is the last public hearing that we'll have in relation to the investigation of the Fulton County Jail. I'll be communicating with each committee member. They'll be submitting recommendations based on each meeting that we've had, whether it was from the judiciary, whether it was from the clerk's office, whether it was from the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, any of the individuals that spoke today. We will come up with a list of recommendations that are approved by the majority of the committee, and we will put those recommendations out with our report. I'm hoping the report will be out no later than the 1st of July if everything goes accordingly. And of course, it will be a public report that will be available to anyone who wishes to see that. Anything from any committee member? If not, then we stand adjourned. Thank you.